Today, we're diving deep into the transformative power of habits and how they can break the negative programming of your mind, allowing you to take control of your life. Now, the hardest part of this journey is a simple yet profound thing: making the time for yourself. You see, when we talk about breaking free from negative programming, it's not just about fleeting pleasures like getting a manicure or buying a sports car. It goes much deeper. It's about the commitment to spend precious moments with yourself, eliminating people and things that no longer serve your growth. Picture this: waking up in the morning or before bedtime, asking yourself, what is the greatest ideal of myself that I want to be today? Now, here's the catch. You decide not to get up until you embody that person. This simple act creates a profound neurological shift, a commitment that rewires your brain. The real challenge is wrestling with your limitations. It's not just about self-love in the traditional sense. It's about sitting with yourself and actively working to overcome those hardwired thoughts, beliefs, and emotional propensities tied to your past. Beyond your pain is freedom. Beyond your fear is courage. And beyond your sadness is joy. It's the same energy, just trapped in the body. Break free from those emotional addictions, and joy becomes the natural side effect. Your body is liberated, and now there's abundant energy to create with. As you break through, something magical happens. You start loving and respecting yourself. You begin to see the same potential in others because you've freed yourself from the chains of old habits. You can understand others with compassion without reacting in the same old ways. The real hurdle here is making the time for this transformation. Imagine deciding to be your ideal self and refusing to get up until you've become that person. This isn't just a mental exercise. It's a neurological and emotional conditioning that shapes your present and future reality. The literal translation of meditation in Tibetan means to become familiar with. It's about becoming conscious of your unconscious self, understanding your thoughts, habits, and emotions. The key is to be so aware that nothing goes unnoticed. This way, there's no chance of reverting to your old self. Now think about moving into a new way of being. Memorize it neurologically in your brain and let those thoughts become your experience. By doing this, you're living in a future reality in the present moment. A new state of being is a new personality, and a new personality is a new personal reality. Changing habits isn't hard. You just need to understand how to unlearn and relearn. Most of who we are is a set of memorized habits by the age of 35. But with the latest research in neuroplasticity and epigenetics, we know we're not hardwired to stay that way. Changing requires a decision, a firm intention. No one can make you change. It has to come from within. Look at those individuals who decided to quit smoking or overcome a challenge just by making a decision. It's an energetic choice that rewires your biology. To change, you must move beyond the analytical mind. Understanding brainwave patterns and slipping into a different state of mind makes the process easier. Remember, 95% of who we are is a set of memorized habits. To change, you need to recondition the body to a new mind. Let's dive a bit deeper into the incredible power of installing new circuits in your brain. Now, our brains are usually like a record of the past, playing back the experiences and thoughts we've had. But what if I told you that you can change that record, shaping it into a map to your future? It's like upgrading your brain's software to become the person you truly want to be. So when we talk about installing new circuits, we're talking about a process of mental rehearsal. Imagine rehearsing in your mind what you want to achieve as if it's already happening. It's not just wishful thinking. It's actively rewiring your brain to reflect your desired future. When you engage in this mental rehearsal, you are essentially installing neurological hardware. Picture it like putting in new wiring that connects different parts of your brain. This wiring then becomes a guide, a map, leading you toward the person you want to become. It's not magic. It's a scientific process that involves your thoughts shaping the structure of your brain. Now let's break it down a bit. The brain, being the record of the past, is like a collection of your past experiences and thoughts. But when you mentally rehearse, you are creating a vision of your future self. The brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So, when you repeatedly imagine your future self, the brain starts to believe it's happening in the present moment. As you keep doing this, the hardware you installed through mental rehearsal begins to transform into a software program. Think of it like upgrading from a basic program to a more advanced one. Your brain is adapting to the new information you're giving it, and you begin to think and act in alignment with your envisioned self. Now, this process isn't a one-time thing. Repetition is the key. The more you mentally rehearse, the stronger the neural connections become. It's like reinforcing the wiring in your brain, making it more resilient and reliable. Your brain adapts to this new way of thinking, making it a natural part of who you are. Think about it this way. If you were learning to play the piano, you wouldn't expect to master it after a single practice session. It takes consistent practice and repetition. Similarly, installing new circuits in your brain requires dedication and persistence. You're essentially training your brain to play a new tune, the tune of your ideal self. As you continue this mental rehearsal, your brain starts to reflect the changes in your thinking. You'll find yourself naturally thinking and acting like the person you want to become. It's not about faking it until you make it. It's about rewiring your brain until it naturally aligns with your goals and aspirations. Those who have transformed didn't wait for external circumstances to feel gratitude or empowerment. They felt those emotions ahead of the experience. The body doesn't know the difference between the experience and the emotion created by thought alone. You're changing your biology by living in a future-present reality. Ever had those moments where you lose track of time and space? That's when you're truly in the present moment, accessing other possibilities according to the quantum model of reality. In this generous present moment, you forget about yourself, opening the door to change. To truly change, you must go beyond your environment, emotions, and the concept of linear time. Your environment consists of people, objects, and places. Your emotions are tied to your body and pain. Linear time keeps you anchored in the past and the predictable future. Beyond these, you become pure consciousness. When you're nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time, you shed the labels and become pure consciousness. In this state, you connect to the consciousness of the field, transcending cultural, societal, and personal identities. So these habits break the negative programming of your mind. Taking control of your life begins with making the time for transformation, with deciding to be the person you aspire to be, and with creating habits that reshape your present and future reality. The power is within you. It's in the decisions you make, the habits you form, and the consciousness you cultivate. Take that step, break free from the chains of the past, and embrace the limitless possibilities of your future. People think self-love is getting a manicure or buying a sports car. That's not self-love, that's pleasure. Self-love is when you're sitting with yourself and you are working on overcoming your hardwired thoughts or beliefs or your emotional propensities that are connected to your past, and you are really working to overcome them. Right on the other side of your pain is freedom. Right on the other side of your fear is courage. Right on the other side of your sadness is joy. It's the same energy, it's just trapped in the body. When you stretch yourself past that point and you break free from the chains of those emotional addictions, the side effect of that is called joy. The body is liberated from that level of mind. When that happens, there's available energy to create with. So when you break through that, you begin to love yourself. You begin to respect yourself, and you begin to love and respect others because you see yourself in them. And now that you're free from it, you can understand them with compassion without knee-jerking in the same way. So the difficulty here is really making the time to do it. And if you began to think about a new way of being and you moved into a state where you said, I'm not going to get up until I am this person. Not only did you memorize it neurologically in your brain, but you allowed the thoughts that you were thinking to become the experience to the point that your body as the unconscious mind began to live in that future reality in the present moment. And when you got up, when mind and body were working together in that state of being, and you said, I'm going to maintain the state of being my entire day, and I don't care. Bring on the challenges because I want to test my greatness. And you did that the entire day. The end of your day, when you finished your day, more than likely, you'd have more energy than when you started. The literal translation of the word meditation in Tibetan means to become familiar with. The symbol means to become familiar with. So if you're becoming conscious of or familiar with your unconscious self, to the point you're so conscious of your unconscious thoughts, so familiar with your unconscious habits, and so aware of your emotions that you would never let them go by unnoticed by you, there's no chance for you to return back to the old self, to know thyself. And then if you became familiar with a new self because you neurologically fired and wired it in your brain, and you emotionally conditioned your body, and you were able to do it enough times, sooner or later it would get easier and it would become more familiar to you, and you would be able to move into that state of being. By the way, a new state of being is a new personality, and a new personality is a new personal reality. One of the things about substances is that it actually helps to change chemistry in the brain and body, so there becomes a chemical dependence on it at that point. But the person who wants to change has to want to change. That's the first element. In other words, no one can make you change, but you have to find it in you to really see if this is what you want to do. I've studied people over the last 12 years. Why is it that one person, an old-timer, can look at his x-rays and see a spot on his lungs, and the doctor will say to him, "Hey George, you know that's a spot on your lungs. It's nothing now, but if you keep smoking, it will be." And that guy just takes his cigarettes, throws them in the trash, and he's done the next day. How do you explain that? He made the decision, and the decision was an experience, and it began to rewrite his chemistry and his biology. How can a person who moves into a state of religious ecstasy, a state of absolute faith, drink strychnine and not get poisoned by it? It's a decision. It's an energetic decision. It's how powerful the mind really is. People then, who actually want to make the decision to change, have to make the decision with firm intention. Once you understand the how-to, that you can't use your conscious mind to do this, you have to move beyond the analytical mind. When you understand brainwave patterns, and when you slip into a different state of mind, that it's easier to do it. So most people then, 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a set of memorized habits and behaviors that become part of our identity or personality. So 5% of the conscious mind is trying to change 95% of what we've memorized, hardwired, become addicted to emotionally. So the person may want to think positively, but they've been feeling negatively and oiling those programs for the last 25 years. They might want a new life with new conditions, and as they use their mind, conscious mind, to focus on that, their subconscious mind, they've been programmed to feel guilty. That's mind and body in opposition. We have to begin to recondition the body to a new mind. So change isn't hard. It's just that you've got to get the manual to understand how to begin to unlearn and relearn, to break the habit of the old self and reinvent the new self. The latest research in neuroplasticity tells us we're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of our lives. The latest research in epigenetics says we're not doomed by our genes, that in fact we're marvels of adaptability and change. So as a person started to contemplate and think about who do I want to be when I open my eyes, what would it be like to be happy? What would it be like to live a new life? The frontal lobe is looking out into the landscape of the entire brain because it has connections to the entire neocortex, and it's got to resolve the problem. So it starts calling up different networks of neurons that are relevant to the question based on the knowledge the person learns or the experiences that they had, and it begins to seamlessly piece together this new understanding, and that's called intention. And so if you're reading a book about how to become more happy, or if you're reading a book on how to be a leader in your life, where you're studying the process, every time you learn something new, you add new connections to your brains and raw materials for you to imagine even more. The act of mentally rehearsing begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like it's already happened. Now, the brain is typically a record of the past, but the moment we install the neurological hardware, it becomes a map to the future. And you keep doing that, the hardware becomes a software program, which means you start thinking like a genius. You start acting like a happy person because there's no mystery there, because you installed the circuits. And then these people didn't wait for their wealth or their health to feel gratitude and to feel empowered or to feel love, a love for life. They began to feel those emotions ahead of the experience, and their body, as the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between the experience and their life that creates the emotion, and their emotion that they're creating by thought alone. The body's believing it's living in the future in the present moment, and the stronger the emotion that they felt, the more they're going to pay attention to the thoughts they're thinking, and now all of a sudden they're changing their biology from living in the past present reality to living in the future present reality. And I was so intrigued by this process that I went back to school to study neuroscience, because it was the answer in the internal process of rehearsing and imagining. They had long moments where they lost track of time and space, where when they opened their eyes, they thought it was maybe 15, 20 minutes later, and it was an hour and 15 minutes later. When we get into the present moment, there's a moment where you lose track of yourself, you forget about yourself, and only in the present moment do you have access, according to the quantum model of reality, to other possibilities. And when you're truly in the present moment, the generous present moment, that's the moment then that you are no longer living in the familiar past or the predictable future. And in order for us to change, I realized that we have to get beyond our environment. And what's our environment made of? People, husbands, kids, bosses, objects, things, places. You got to get beyond your emotions, your body, your pain, your disease, and you got to get beyond this concept of linear time. So when we get beyond our body, our environment and time, we become pure consciousness. And now that consciousness can begin to connect to the consciousness of the field. And so if you're not there and you need a mirror or reflection, then it's good to ask, am I missing something? Am I not seeing myself in some way? And then there's a healthy conversation when you invite it. But if you're not invited to contribute your opinion, then it's better off that you don't, right? So people always say, I want a loving relationship, but what they really want is happiness. Really. So we do these meditations to create love in our lives, and it could be love in familial relationships with your siblings, it could be with your parents, it could be with your friends, or it could be with a significant other. And so if thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings are the magnetic charge in the quantum field, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts an electromagnetic signature that influences every single atom in your life, the thought sends a signal out, and the feeling is the magnetic field that draws the event back to you, right? So if you're not in a place where you're in love with life or in love with yourself, or practicing diminishing your emotional reactions to certain people or conditions in your life, and you're living in anger or hostility or judgment or fear, and you want a loving relationship, there is no magnetic field for you to draw that to you. And in fact, if you say to me, well, it's that person or that circumstance that's caused me to feel this way, and then I would say, I mean, that person or that circumstance is controlling the way you feel and the way you think, and anything that controls the way we feel in the way we think we are victims to, right? So most people are unconsciously responding to the conditions in their environment, experiencing emotions that are derived from the hormones of stress. Those emotions cause us to feel separate from our dreams. They heighten our senses, so if we can't see them, it doesn't exist. The threat or the danger puts us in emergency mode, and we can think positively about the relationship we want. We could send the signal out into the field. We could have pictures, we could remind ourselves of what it is, but if you're not drawing the experience back to you, because your response to the environment is actually weakening your organism, it's weakening, your response is actually weakening the body, then you will be, as a victim, more vulnerable to the conditions in your environment. Whether they're large or small, and I'm talking about microorganisms as well. So if you wanted a true relationship where it was fundamentally based on this concept called love, now let's talk about that, because we practice this a lot in the work that we do. Well, a habit is a redundant set of automatic unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. The habit is when you've done something so many times that your body now knows how to do it better than your mind. So if you think about it, people wake up in the morning, they begin to think about their problems. Those problems are circuits of memories in the brain. Each one of those memories are connected to people and things at certain times and places. And if the brain is a record of the past, the moment they start their day, they're already thinking in the past. Each one of those memories has an emotion. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. So the moment they recall those memories of their problems, they all of a sudden feel unhappy, they feel sad, they feel pain. Now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So the person's entire state of being when they start their day is in the past. So what does that mean? The familiar past will sooner or later be predictable future. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking by very definition of emotions, you're thinking in the past, and for the most part, you're going to keep creating the same life. So then people grab their cell phone, they check their WhatsApp, they check their text, they check their emails, they check Facebook, they take a picture of their feet, they post it on Facebook, they tweet something, they do Instagram, they check the news, and now they feel really connected to everything that's known in their life. And then they go through a series of routine behaviors. They get out of bed on the same side, they go to the toilet, they get a cup of coffee, they take a shower, they get dressed, they drive to work the same way. Nothing happened neurologically, biologically, chemically, hormonally, genetically. You're still in the same state of being. But when you get up and you feel like elevated sense of self, your heart is swollen and you have a clear vision of your future and your energy's different. The question is, how long can you maintain that state? So you're literally broadcasting a whole new electromagnetic signature in that state. Thoughts tend to be electric and feelings tend to be magnetic. The way we think and feel is what we broadcast into the field, and what we broadcast into the field is our experimental destiny. So then when you go within and you disconnect from your outer world and you sit your body down and it's no longer experiencing anything and you're not thinking about your schedule, your past, or your future, as I said today, you're being defined by thought and you're making your inner world more real than your outer world. When you open your eyes and you present yourself to the world, the job then is to not react emotionally to the same conditions in your life, because the moment you react emotionally, you're equal to the conditions in your life and you're back in your past. So then when you fall from grace and you move off that state, then you sit down and you realign. You begin to tune in again and you change your energy again. Now, when I'm going through change in my life, or I will have a specific outcome that I want to create, I love to get up early in the morning. That's my time. I'm a 4:30 in the morning guy because that's my time. The rest of the day I'm serving, but I love getting up early and changing and working and having some time to myself. And I believe that when I invest in myself, I invest in my future. And that time in my morning, nobody bothers me because that's my time. And because of brain waves and brain chemistry, the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is more open. And so if I get up early and I'm kind of between theta and alpha, I don't have to work as hard. I'm not thinking, I just kind of relax into the moment. In the evening, I always ask myself, how did I do? How was one lifetime in one day? Where did I fall from grace? What happened? And so then when I look at seeing how I reacted to someone or something, or I made the choice that I could have made a better choice, We all do this, begin to think, well, if the same situation happened again, how would I do it differently? And that's the act of beginning to come up with a new plan. The act of rehearsing it in your mind begins to install the circuits in your brain, priming your brain so that when the next experience happens, you could modify your behavior to do a better job in life. That's called plasticity. If you decide, okay, if I'm taking time out of my busy life to emulate the divine creator, then if I'm going to create something unlimited, I better feel unlimited. If I'm going to do something magnificent, I have to become magnificent. And if you keep doing that over and over again, it will begin to become more readily available to you. It'll get easier. And so when we're in that energy all the time, that's when the synchronicities and the serendipities and all those wonderful coincidences begin to happen. And it's those coincidences that are feedback in our environment where the field begins to open doors for us. That's what we want to occur. Now, I have worked on things in my life, and I'm a sincere person. I've worked on things in my life for years, and I always thought it was about the event or the experience I wanted to create. But all along, I was changing. And when I finally reached a point where I could care less if I could have the experience, is the moment it happened. But all along, the divine, loving intelligence, this mother-father principle, of course, it's observing us into life. We are vitalistic, energetic beings that when we begin to unify all these principles that we're talking about, you can't get this in one sitting. You can't. You have to keep understanding it, keep reviewing it, keep redoing it, keep experiencing it. And new experience then causes you to dream in a way you would have never dreamt before unless you had that experience. And that's how God gets to know itself. So then I don't care what meditation you do, I just like the fact that you're connecting. And the more you connect, the more whole you feel, the more natural it becomes. Then, of course, the next experience then causes you to dream in another way. And what I know from my own experience and many students, it's not about material things. It's about those mystical moments, those transcendental moments, those moments where your jaw drops and you are in awe of life, those moments that take our breath away, that cause us. And this has happened to me so many times. Every time I have one of those experiences, I think to myself, I got this all wrong. So now they've lost their free will to a program. And there's no unseen hand doing it to them. So when it comes time to change, the redundancy of that cycle becomes a subconscious program. So now 95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program. So then a person can say with their 5% of their conscious mind, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, I want to be free, but the body's on a whole different program. So then how do you begin to make those changes? Well, you have to get beyond the analytical mind, because what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. And that's where meditation comes in, because you can teach people through practice how to change their brain waves, slow them down. And when they do that properly, they do enter the operating system where they can begin to make some really important changes. So most people then wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis. They wait for loss, some tragedy to make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? And you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. I think right now the cool thing is that people are waking up. Most people spend 70% of their life living in survival and living in stress. So they're always anticipating the worst case scenario based on a past experience. And they're literally out of the infinite potentials in the quantum field. They're selecting the worst possible outcome, and they're beginning to emotionally embrace it with fear. And they're conditioning their body into a state of fear. Do that enough times, body has a panic attack without you. You can't even predict it because it's programmed subconsciously. So people become addicted to the rush of those emotions, and they use the problems and conditions in their life to reaffirm their limitation so at least they can feel something. So now when it comes time to change, you say to the person, "Why are you this way?" Well, every time they recall the event, they're producing the same chemistry in their brain and body as if the event is occurring, firing and wiring the same circuits and sending the same emotional signature to the body. What's the relevance behind that? Well, your body is your unconscious mind. In a sense, if you're sitting down and you start thinking about some future worst-case scenario that you're conjuring up in your mind, and you begin to feel the emotion of that event, your body doesn't know the difference between the event that's taking place in your world, outer world, and what you're creating by emotion or thought alone. So most people then, they're constantly reaffirming their emotional states. So when it comes time to give up that emotion, they can say, "I really want to do it." But really the body is stronger than the mind because it's been conditioned that way. So the servant now has become the master, and the person all of a sudden, once they step into that unknown, they'd rather feel guilt and suffering because at least they can predict it. Being in the unknown is a scary place for most people because the unknown is uncertain. People say to me, "Well, I can't predict my future, I'm in the unknown." And I always say the best way to predict your future is to create it. Not from the known, but from the unknown. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day? The act of rehearsing the mentally closing your eyes and rehearsing the action. Rehearsing the reaction of what you want or the action of what you want. The action of what you want by closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing some action. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between what you're imaging and what you're experiencing in 3D world. So then you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, priming it that way, the hardware becomes a software program. And who knows, you just may start acting like a happy person. And then I think the hardest part is to teach our body emotionally what the future will feel like ahead of the actual experience. So what does that mean? You can't wait for your success to feel empowered.